I'm just waiting for everybody to arrive.
Yeah, exactly. We have a couple of minutes before we start, everyone. So I'm drinking
Cool.
some tea because I've lost my voice. So feel free to take a break.
I'd love to know where everybody's calling in from in the chat, if everybody can. I feel like ADP List is one of those amazing global communities, so it's always nice to know where everybody's at.
Awesome. So I'm just gonna give 20 more, 30 more seconds, and then we'll kick off because we have a very interesting session in front of us. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Awesome. I'm not good with data, so I'm gonna start. My name is Leonam, but feel free to call me Leo, and I'm gonna be the one who is gonna be moderating this panel today. I just want to kick off and start with a few things before I ask the guests to introduce themselves, and we take it from there. So, firstly, I just think it's quite important to just get some groundwork, just so we can remind ourselves that one, we are here because we want to have fun. So remember that if you have a positive energy, that positive energy will be spread throughout this conversation. Then, secondly, I hope that you can bring your whole self. So maybe some of you are working, maybe some of you are sending emails or whatnot. That's fine. But for the ones that are here, do make sure that we respect our guests. Then the last two things I wanted to mention is that we hope to build on each other ideas and just remember of the power of structuring as well. So I told the panelists that I hope that we have 25% for each. With that in mind, let's begin. So we are here to talk about collaboration, right? Like, does it have to be so hard? So I'll just read quickly some definitions of collaboration from Urban Dictionary, and then I'll ask the panel to introduce themselves. So according to that beautiful website, Urban Dictionary defines collaboration as the idea that everyone can work together to produce something. That's the number one. That can become better than the original version. The second definition is an unnatural act practiced by non-consenting adults. And then lastly is when a group of awesome talents comes together to share. So the flow of today is basically going to be the following. The speakers are going to start. We have done some preparations and we're going to discuss pretty much three elements. So firstly, we'll discuss alignments, then we're going to engagement, and then to sustainability. And my challenge is for the folks that are listening here, ask questions. I will ask the panelists to ask you questions. We want to have as an interactive session as possible because we are talking about collaboration. So that's it from me. So maybe Dava, do you want to say a few words about yourself first? It'd be great just to get to know you a little bit more, and maybe you can try to also say to you, like, why does collaboration matter to you?
Awesome. Hey, everybody from everywhere. Dava Guthmiller, and I am the founder and chief creative officer at Noise 13. We're a branding and design agency in San Francisco. And I am also the co-founder of Invisible Talks and Invisible Venture. And you can find out about us in 100 different ways. But in both of those companies, Invisible and Noise 13, collaboration is a huge part of our values. So for me, collaboration, I think the best part of that is getting new ideas and things that you wouldn't really think of. And then part of that is also being able to solve the problem um, better for those who actually need to use it, especially when you are collaborating with those end users and consumers and viewers, readers, whether it's a listening exercise or activities. When you are collaborating with those who need to use what you are providing, I feel like they're getting a better solution. So new ideas, new ways of thinking, and a better result for the end customer.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Who
Deva.
wants to continue?
Thank you, Deva. That was amazing to hear. My name is Shreya, and I'm a product designer at Flipkart, which is India's largest e-commerce company. I have been working in product design from past 5 to 6 years, and why collaboration matters to me is the realization that we as designers, our work are is not in silos. There is a lot that other teams contribute to our work to bring life to our work, be it engineering, be it the business team, which enriches every part of product design. And that is why collaboration extremely matters to me. It matters to us as product designers, and very excited to hear everyone's comment on why collaboration matters to them in the chat. We have a fantastic audience, so thank you so much to everyone who have joined us today.
Mish, do you want to continue maybe?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Mish. I am a product designer at Octave. I also freelance and advise for Web3 early stage startups and do a lot of mentoring. And to me, I kind of fell in love with collaboration, having worked in lots of different contexts and just seeing how people collaborate in different companies. And when I was working at a company where it was completely global, that was where I learned the power of building strong relationships with people and taking that extra mile to make sure that you can build authentic relationships with people from across the globe so you can definitely, one, of course, create great products, and to come up with better ideas together, which Deva and Shreya just both talked about. But I think the third thing is happy teams. When you are in sync and collaborating and really just like friends with each other, friends with the people that you work with, you can give feedback, you can receive feedback quickly, and it doesn't feel like conflict. And that for me is something that is really magical. And I feel like everybody as designers should be able to experience that. And final note, I really love that Leo took a note on what I said when we were having a conversation earlier, but I think a part of it is advocating for design, is to be a collaborator. So when you're advocating for design, what does that mean? And I kind of simplified it as making sure people know that they matter. So, yeah.
Awesome. So, Mr. Andrew, I see your name on the chat a bit, so I guess people know you. So, who are you? Why does collaboration matter?
My name is Andrew Sandler. I guess sold out of my design career. So I am currently the head of the self-service help and support platform at Adobe. So if you ever get stuck using Photoshop or Illustrator and you go on Google and you do a search, you'll end up on helpx.adobe.com. So our help experience right now is 1.5 million pages, almost 76 countries, 26 languages. We have 500 writers that are here in support of everybody using their tools. I know we are both probably the arch nemesis and the villain this week on social. So I can't really talk about all of the news, but just know that, we're here to unlock creativity for all. And a lot of that is how do we partner together, right? On our best days, designers are probably 85% right. And then, it's that partnership with product and engineering really in service to our customers that gets us to the right answers. And candidly, a lot of the times we're not able to build our experiences that we envision. So collaboration gets our ideas on paper and then gets them out the door so people can actually experience them in the world, and we can learn from them and really invest in making people's lives better. So for me, collaboration is that process of how do we come up with the great idea? How do we validate that it works well? How do we communicate our needs? And then how do we execute effectively to go change the world?
Awesome. So now we all got to know each other a little bit more, and I think that we gained some insights on alignment, right? So both from the chat, but also from the panelists, they sort of all mentioned a little bit their perspective of the importance of alignment. And I was telling them before a bit about awareness, right? Like, why does collaboration matter? So in today's economy, I think a lot of people are more curious on the how. So let's talk about engagement. So, I guess some of you are product designers, product people, or people like me who are in the people and culture field. Regardless, I mean, I'm very curious on, can we make sure that, then I'll start with you, Mish, if that's okay. So what is missing for us to make sure that collaboration is a truth in today's
Yeah. I think having moved into this remote world, people have really struggled with, building human connections like you would in the workplace. And the reality is, it is possible to actually have really great culture. And I think that is the foundation of collaboration is, having little moments that aren't just completely focused on work, but like something I do myself is as little as this has like really made a huge difference with my team is I ask a question every Friday, and I put a lot of thought into these questions where people, let's be real, people love to talk about themselves, but I want to hear the stories of people on my team. So I'll ask questions like, well, like, where did you grow up and what's your favorite thing about your hometown? Because, we are in a global kind of workforce environment. And people share stories or like, what was your favorite band in high school? Or how would you explain your job to a 4-year-old? And all of these things where we are sharing positive stories and learning about each other. And then that leads into, it's low effort. It's on Slack. It's just a thread. You're not like having to say things in person. But then when we have meetings together, these things get brought up. So I think laying that groundwork of building authentic relationships and is the most important part. I hope that answered the question, but there are so many different methodologies in terms of just really focusing on low effort, high engagement. And if it's really around design, creativity, activities that involve that. So like I have design jams in the mornings, mornings are not that great. But having design jams of visual designers, or we're just like thinking outside of the box and having these different types of practices, which take like, they don't just like appear, it just takes practice and trial and error. But I've seen a huge difference in doing just these little things that are really rooted in just building psychological safety on the team. So I think for me, that is engagement.
Great. I agree. So, Deva, I was thinking of asking you a question connected to what Mish just said, because you have been running in the industry, in the business for over 20 years. So I wanted to pick up your brains on what do you think that is needed to build an environment? So coming to Mish's point, right, to shape the environment by intent or by design and not by accident when we think about collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I think if collaboration is important to your team, making sure that that's part of your values. So, as a company, as a brand, making sure that it's starting at that internal, this is important to us, because if it doesn't come from the top down, it's much, much harder to lead that from one voice, especially the larger the company becomes. So, if that's something that's important to you, putting it in your values as a company, or if you can't do it at the company level, doing it at the team level, and making that agreement. The other thing that we do is we hire for it, right? So we put our values on our website, we put them in our proposals, we ask the questions when people come to us. We are not a really competitive workspace. I mean, yes, people like their designs to be chosen. Yes, you want to, level up, but we all do better work when we're working together. And so interviewing for those skill sets, for that interest, which because it's important to us. So starting from the internal, making sure it's part of your values, communicating those values. For us, we hire for it. It's in our annual reviews. We review for it. And then we put, just like Mish does, we put those things in place on a weekly basis. The questions, now that we're all virtual, are huge. Those getting to know you moments, those acts of empathy, of understanding where somebody is. They're having a bad day, they're frustrated, they're excited. Making sure that you're incorporating those empathy moments into how you collaborate as well, I think are really huge. And I think outside of the team, for us, we also create moments and tools and spaces for us to collaborate with our clients, with their teams, and with their customers. And I think the biggest moment of that is listening, making time to listen to the stakeholders, those people with other opinions, letting those people talk. Listening is a huge skill in collaboration, and knowing on our side, knowing that ideas can come from anywhere. Part of our weekly exploration around collaboration is a project pinup, where designers or anybody can show work that they're in the middle of, and everybody at the company can provide insight, feedback, notes. Everybody comes with different backgrounds, different sources of reference, different cultural impact. And ideas don't just come from designers, they don't just come from leadership. So making space for everybody's ideas to matter. Those are kind of our big ones.
Yeah, I love that. I want to really quickly add on to that. Something that hit hard with me is I work for a very large company, but I think the grassroots portion is really important. I've tried to tackle it with the greater design team, running big exercises, but it's really difficult as the team continues to grow and you have to constantly meet new people. So, starting with yourself and working on active listening, working on empathy, and reaching out to people and getting to know them and checking in on them, just the most basic human things can just do it brings magic into a team. And you're able to do that at that grassroots level. On my team in particular, we kind of got to create our own culture. We didn't have any rules, and we focused so much around everything you just touched on, Deva, that it's turned into something so great that other members of the core team have been looking to us as inspiration for collaboration. So you can actually really start at that grassroots level and then bring it up. And as people see success from teams that are doing really well, then of course, the higher ups are going to start caring and wanting to know how did you do this, and how can we make this a team or an organizational wide practice. So fully agree with that. And also values, super important, deciding on your values, living through your values, and just caring about people. So, and the vision.
Awesome. I work with people in culture, right? So it's great when leaders, they say that, so it's not just me. So I just wanted to get a question from the audience, because I see that there's loads of interesting questions. So Andrew, firstly, I'm an extrovert, right? I'm hosting this. Anyone that has interacted with me, they would say Leo likes people. However, a lot of people are introverts, or they're in the spectrum of being more introverted. So Andrew, since I know you have loads of years of experience with global teams and so on, the question is, how do you pull your more introverted team members into the collaborative conversation?
Appreciate the question. I think there's actually kind of 3 different levels to that. The first one is realizing that people tend to have different communication styles. So there are people that are very much in the moment, bottom line it for me, let's talk about this right now, resolve it, and walk away. There's people that tend to be very collaborative communicators. They want to talk it through backwards and forwards. There's people that tend to be really creative, that they need to kind of almost get the brief, go off and think about it, and then come back. And there's other people that tend to be very conscientious. Like there's a set of steps, and if you do steps the right way, you're always going to get the right answer. And then when you kind of superimpose that with this idea that some people are extroverted, they get energy from big groups, and some people are introverted, they get more energy from one-on-one conversations. I think it's leaning into the work that Mish and David talked about, which is, does everything have to be decided now? So one of the things could be exactly what we're doing today. We're all in conversation, and then there's a Slack channel or a chat channel on the side. And so giving people the avenue to interject and ask questions and respond in ways that they're comfortable with. And then if you have the time available to you, leave it open for a minute. Maybe you need to go think about it for a day and come back and you're like, hey, I slept on that last night. And then the drive in this morning, I had this wild epiphany. What do you all think about this thing? And so I think it's that ability to make both time and space available. So it's not decide this thing right now. I'm putting you on the spot right now. Because if, as creatives, if that's not how we think, if we've got to go home and sketch or whiteboard, you've got to build that in a little bit and then be able to feed that back into the process and keep going.
Awesome. So Shreya, I am going to touch base on to other elements of culture, which I think it's a little bit of what we're discussing, okay? So my question to you, it kind of comes a little bit about your identity or like your background in a way, right? Like being a woman, being born in India, being a designer, right? So like, I mean, what is your take on when I think about, we all think about diversity, equity, and inclusivity? I tend to call this togetherness. Like what are some of those elements that come into the table to make sure that we actually are we're collaborating the right way? What do you think?
I think in India, what we need to really do is to consciously make efforts to be more inclusive. In my workspace as well. Let's say there's a mother, a new mother, and there was an event in which we had to include her for a design-a-thon or something. We made a conscious effort to adjust to her timings. Right? If she's able to give only a certain hours in a day, we make sure that we include her in a design-a-thon like that, in a setup like that, so that we can have a contribution at that time. It requires certain amount of effort to be that inclusive. We have to understand that they also have some restriction. They also come from a background. They would add a lot of perspective, and giving that value that, hey, your perspective is very important for this particular design assignment or something, and we would love to have your time at whenever you are comfortable. So not just you are giving them that flexibility to collaborate at their pace, but also you are giving them an opportunity to be more in an inclusive environment. And another thing that I want to add in, especially like India, there are very few women design leaders that you can live up to. Very few. If I get the opportunity, I would want to learn more from it, women design leaders, right? How did they climb up the ladder? What were the difficulties that they faced, right? So, and I want to give that opportunity to more women around. Whenever I see that, I try to make sure that they participate more. If they're coming up to me, I provide them some mentorship, official, unofficial, even if I'm not directly managing them. So I don't want to miss instances like this, because this also contributes to culture. If I don't set it, who's going to propagate it, right? So that's my point of view on this.
Awesome. I send the first GIF of the day, I think, because I think that's a super important topic to remember, the data of how many women in leadership and design do we have to begin with. I wanted to then do a ping pong with the four of you quickly, because I took a look on the questions that we have, since we're in the engagement part. Okay, so I got a question here which I thought was provocative. So I want you all to answer. The first thing that comes to your heads, okay? It's okay to have the same answer. What is your favorite remote collaboration tool, and why it's not Microsoft Teams?
Currently Miro for us, because everybody can draw, write, they can come back to it. You can set timers, you can vote. I don't use Microsoft Teams.
I think for me it's Google Meets and calendar, because then I want to understand which stakeholder I want to pull in and when do I want to schedule that sync up with everyone. So for me it would be Google Meets, because it gives me the visibility of my stakeholders' time. And yeah, that's design tools definitely, but yeah, this is something that adds to collaboration.
I would say Loom is my favorite, and also the one that used to give me the most anxiety. I was a theater kid, so I would write a script every time I had to record something very basic just to share. But having that there, and you can place it in Notion, Confluence, whatever, wherever is your hub of knowledge, and sharing, or Slack. It's just such a great way of talking through things and explaining things. So it just is this living proof of a walking prototype. But beyond that, of course, I'm more of a Fig Jam gal than a Miro person, just because I love having everything in Figma.
Figma is awesome too, but we use for our clients who are not designers. That's why Miro is on our list.
Yeah, we use both.
Andrew, how about you?
I think there's kind of two parts to this. One is it an asynchronous collaboration or is it a synchronous collaboration? So like async, quite often we're in Miro for big canvases. Of course, up until now, we've used XD to do prototypes and kind of flows. And then for synchronous, we are a Microsoft Teams company. And so being able to get on a call with a bunch of people, share screens, have that conversation. And slowly, we're finally coming actually back into the office. And so, it's whatever the available collaboration tools that don't misbehave with our TV screens, cameras, everything in the office. So
Awesome. So I will ask one final question for this block, and then I really want to talk about sustainability because I'm very passionate about that topic. So I'm gonna do the following. I'm gonna read the question out loud, and I'm gonna ask one of the panelists that feels the most interest in answering the question. Feel free to answer, and then people on the chats feel free to answer that as well. So the question is, how do you measure collaboration in a review? I am curious of what review means here. I'm gonna make an assumption, okay? My assumption is that it's a performance review, so it's like something to do with, if it's like a promotion or something around growth or development or salary, like any of those types. Like, how do you bring collaboration into that conversation, and how do you measure?
I actually put my straight up review question right in the chat to whoever answered that or asked that. So I'm reading from our Team 360 review, which is a Google form, and it says, is this person collaborative? Do they promote open dialogue and direct communication with frequent feedback from those with different skill sets? Do they have clear communication and openness with clients and team and recognize that clients know their business? And we sort of go into a lot more questions. I couldn't actually put them there. And then there's literally a sliding scale, which for all of our questions is outstanding, which means consistently exceeds expectation, okay, room for improvement, or not good, needs significant improvement. And then there's a place for more notes. So that's directly how we do it in reviews. Anybody else?
I can go. I feel like we have this. Again, I work on a really small team, about 20 people, and we have monthly retros. And in our retros, we have this kudos section, and so much of that is always around because we have a culture of collaboration, I think, already in place. That, like, the kudos section in itself, it's just like, thank you for being collaborative on this. Thank you for working with me on this. Like, all of these little pieces of conversations in Slack. And to all the designers out there, anytime you get a good compliment or good feedback somewhere, take a screenshot of it and save it. Highly recommend doing that. But yeah, we do this retro. And so that is like a big part of it. When you're giving kudos, you're typically giving somebody else kudos because you've worked with them. So there's that collaborative factor in there. And you can pull that into when you're doing 360 reviews. We also have like another thing that's like internal where you can also give kudos outside of this, like just like company wide. So there are a lot of places where we have just, places where it's all about positivity and like giving credit to other people for how they worked. And I think that's how we've been able to really measure it, because the reviews, you just kind of look back on all of our retros, everything's written down in there. You can look at their, how many kudos they've gotten on the company platform. And so, yeah.
So that's interesting, Mish, because I have a slightly different take, and I think there's a couple parts to it. The first one is collaboration shows up in the output, right? I mean, there's what people say and there's what they do. And candidly, I think you can measure the person on, do they show up? Are they in close partnership? Are they thoughtful? And do they push back constructively, right? Because collaboration isn't saying yes, it's working with people. And sometimes you got to say no. And that's the hardest thing to try and figure out. But at the end of the day, is the team that they're with the team that everybody else wants to work besides, right? And that shows up in all of the other results and all those KPIs that we all are held accountable to, depending on our business. The strongest collaborative teams are going to be the ones that drive the most impact generally to the business. So there's the behavioral side of it, how we do it, but as much of that is what gets done. And so, Melvin, I think there's two parts to this is are they delivering meaningful impact and results? And then are they doing it in a way that is sustainable and builds on the culture that you all want to have going forward?
Awesome.
In addition to what Andrew said here, I think when you're rating a designer and seeing that how much they're collaborative, you should also see how many, what have they done with that kind of feedback that they got from the stakeholders? Which were those comments which they accepted? Which were the comments which they did not accept? Did they have a strong reasoning for not accepting versus accepting, or accepting versus not accepting? That would define, that person was a good collaborator in terms of taking opinion. And obviously inclusivity, because that's also a base of having a good collaborative skill. Yeah.
Great. I'm really happy. As the kids in the internet say, I'm obsessed with the fact that all of you get very hands-on. And we only have 7 minutes left. So I want us to close a little bit with the third element of this discussion, which is sustainability. So Leo is a bit sick today. I don't know why. I guess he's just been talking too much. So imagine Leo can't work for the rest of the week, right? OMG. What do we do next? So my question I'm going to ask Mesh something, because she was really into the development of her teams before. Like, Mish, what have you learned? Like, what happens when you are sick, or when you are in Bali, or like when you work?
This is so relevant right now because like over summer break, we have a very like PTO, like literally take all that you want. So like people are gone for 2 weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 week. And I'm not going to lie, it's been pretty difficult, but it was a learning experience in that we realized we need to be better at documentation. We need to like, as simple as like bookmarking certain things. And what I did when I went on my 2-week vacation was I actually wrote down, I love to write, it should just be a PM or something, but I wrote down everything that I designed, the solution, absolutely everything, the mocks, and then pass that on to the designer, the other designer, my counterpart, who was coming back from vacation. So he missed everything else in between. And that was one way of doing it. But I'm going to say the looms make a huge difference. And another thing is we also try to keep our Slack channels very tidy. So we have one really like for everything. And we are encouraged to actually just post everything in there that turns into long threads. So you can link those. Just link the threads of what we need to learn, what you need to catch up on. But it takes work. It takes documentation. However, the way your company does it, we use Confluence, and getting into that pattern and rhythm, and also recognizing the pain points and trying to fix it. So you're muted.
Leo, you're on mute. It's the first time. It's the first time. Good job.
Thank you. I was gonna like go on and on. So Shreya, I was gonna ask a question around the digital sustainability. So the perspective of, I mean, Mishi was talking a bit about the tools and so on, right? So like, what do you think that the digital landscape plays a role now into when we come and think about the sustainability of it? It's like, do you have any tips or something that is in your hands around it?
Even when we are there in the company or when we are not there in the company, the culture that we set in the digital world of communication and collaboration should stay. That's the mark that you leave as individual designer, and that's how people will remember you, right? So I think it's very important for the collaboration to be sustainable, because if it is not, it'll die down someday, and then nobody would be following it, and in that case it would just someone has to come new and build a new culture all over again, and there'll be nothing to learn from somebody else, right? So when I'll give a practical example while working with Flipkart, is I build on culture set by my leads and my manager, and I build on top of it. So I also take the inputs from what they have done so far, see what has been working, what is not working, and what can be improved upon, and then set my own standards there so that it can be taken ahead. So I think that's very important to build sustainability, and it augments on top of what someone has already built, and it always improves and becomes better and better.
Good stuff. I'm very impressed. We have 3 minutes, so I told the panelists that I had a surprise question to them in the end. My surprise question is that I would love for you all to close off with, instead of giving us an answer, giving us a question. So we've discussed, right, like alignment, engagement, sustainability. I really wish we had a little bit of more time. But so now that those 3 topics are up in the air, and the name of this panel is Collaboration Doesn't Have to Be Hard. What's the question that you have for everyone that is here? Anyone can start.
What would make the collaboration easy for you now? Think about it.
What type of tool do you wish existed that doesn't?
In a world where most of your organization is going to say no, how are you the team that says yes?
Mm.
This is a little outside of the box, but how do you continue learning about collaborative practices? Because things are constantly changing. So it's just like design, just like technology. There are always new ways of collaborating. So how do you think ahead?
Good stuff. So I think we have a minute and a half left, maybe 1 minute. So does anyone have any wishes or final words that they wish to say now?
I would say
I think
that
the
if
other-
anyone thinks that there is anything that they can do at their organization to build a better collaboration, they should be more and talk about it and take it ahead in their organization.
I would just also end on the sustainability. The more processes you can put in place and make sure that everyone knows what those processes are for collaboration is really helpful. But like Shreya mentioned, to like review those, make sure everyone knows that they can always improve on them. Just because there's a process does not mean it needs to stay exactly the same forever.
I'm just going to leave with, like, design is a superpower, right? You do 3 things that are amazing. You connect the different teams because you're the source of truth and idea. You keep the user front and center in the conversations across the organization, delivering value and impact. And most importantly, you make things that are previously undiscovered potentially possible, right? It's your ideas, your sketches, your vision, your prototypes that bring something out of nothing and create that possibility for it to exist. And that's really hard work. So tell better stories, bring people along, because the work that you do matters.
I'm going to close it very quickly with exactly how I started. Advocating for design is making sure people not only feel but know that they matter and doing it authentically. That is the baseline, I think, for me, and it's a value that I live through. So starting from there, you will learn, and come across, difficulties of collaboration. But when you have that foundation, oh, my thing just went crazy. When you have that foundation, it makes it easier because it makes your coworkers human instead of just people on a Zoom call. So,
I think we just got booted.
Good stuff. So, folks, it's 11:01 CET. I'm gonna go for a run, but thank you so much for the panelists for amazing insights. Thanks so much for everyone that did provide some really interesting questions. Now we're all knowing of each other, so I hope we can keep collaborating going forward.